vast tapestry of ancient Egyptian civilization, law and justice were deeply intertwined with religion, morality, and cosmic order. While pharaohs, viziers, and local courts constituted the formal structures of justice, the use of oracles to discern truth and administer justice was a distinctive and fascinating feature of Egyptian jurisprudence. Oracle-based justice combined religious belief, divination, and legal procedure, reflecting the Egyptian understanding of Ma'at, the principle of truth, order, and cosmic harmony. Historical and cultural context. In ancient Egypt, justice was not merely a legal or social concept, but a divine mandate. The Egyptian worldview was rooted in the balance of Ma'at, which governed both the cosmos and human society. Pharaohs were seen as divine intermediaries between gods and people, and their primary role included upholding Ma'at through law, governance, and ritual. Within this framework, oracles, interpreted as direct communications from deities, were considered legitimate instruments for determining truth and adjudicating disputes. Oracles were present throughout Egyptian history, from the Old Kingdom, c. 2686 to 181 BCE, through the Ptolemaic period, 332 to 30 BCE. They were most often associated with major temples dedicated to prominent deities, such as Amun-Ra at Karnak, Thoth at Hermopolis, and Hathor at Dendera. Each temple could host specialized priests who acted as intermediaries between the gods and the people, often conveying divine verdicts in legal matters. Functioning of oracular justice. Oracle-based justice operated under the assumption that gods had perfect knowledge of human actions and intentions. In legal disputes, particularly those involving accusations of theft, adultery, sacrilege, or murder, the concerned parties might be brought before an oracle. The process could take various forms. 1. Sacred trials by lots or divination. A common method involved placing symbols, inscriptions, or written statements into sacred objects, such as urns, boxes, or statues. The priest would then draw a lot or interpret the movement of the object as a divine judgment. For example, a reed or a small figurine could point toward the guilty party. These practices were grounded in the belief that the deity would ensure the outcome reflected moral truth. 2. Oracular questions and priest interpretation. In more direct approaches, priests would pose specific questions to the deity, sometimes involving silent meditation, recitation of sacred texts, or ritual offerings. The deity's response could manifest through dreams, movements of a sacred image, or even the spontaneous utterances of the priest, believed to be possessed or inspired by the divine spirit. The verdict was then recorded and enforced by civil authorities. 3. Sworn oaths. Before oracles, in cases where direct divine judgment was not invoked, litigants were sometimes required to swear oaths in front of a deity or temple statue. False oaths were considered morally and spiritually dangerous, invoking divine punishment. The fear of divine retribution acted as a moral enforcement mechanism, often eliminating the need for physical trial. Before, divine intervention in criminal justice. In serious crimes such as homicide or blasphemy, oracles were invoked to uncover the guilty party. For instance, might lead a suspect to touch a sacred object, and a sudden illness or reaction could be interpreted as divine confirmation of guilt. In other cases, the gods were believed to communicate through oracular dreams that revealed hidden truth to judges or witnesses. Types of disputes resolved. Oracle-based justice was most commonly used in private disputes, religious offenses, and cases of moral ambiguity, where human witnesses or evidence were insufficient. Some of the typical cases included property and inheritance conflicts. Inheritance disputes were particularly sensitive as they involved family honor and wealth. When documentation was ambiguous or testimonies conflicted, the oracle's guidance provided a final resolution. Accusations of adultery or infidelity. Since adultery was considered a violation of Ma'at and could disrupt family and social stability, oracular methods were used to determine truth. Divine judgment was seen as impartial and absolute. Sacred or religious offenses. Violations against temples, sacred objects, or ritual practices often required divine verification. The priesthood's interpretation of an oracle's response ensured that the religious and legal spheres remained intertwined. Criminal and civil litigation. In smaller towns or regions where local courts lacked resources or impartiality, oracles served as an alternative mechanism for justice. By invoking the deity's insight, The community trusted that fairness would prevail even in the absence of formal evidence. Priestly mediation and legitimacy. Priests were essential to the functioning of oracular justice. They acted as intermediaries who could interpret divine will and translate it into actionable verdicts. The legitimacy of the system depended on their perceived piety, ritual knowledge, and impartiality. Priesthoods often maintained meticulous records of oracular pronouncements, preserving the link between divine guidance and societal governance. It is important to note that while oracles were influential, they did not replace conventional judicial systems. Pharaohs, viziers, and local courts adjudicated most legal matters, and oracles were typically invoked when human judgment seemed insufficient or morally uncertain. In this sense, oracular justice functioned as a supplement to civil law, providing a divine check on human decision-making. Social and psychological impact. Oracle-based justice served multiple functions beyond mere dispute resolution. Moral regulation. The belief that gods could detect lies and wrongdoing encouraged ethical behavior. Citizens were less likely to commit crimes or false accusations if divine scrutiny was possible. Conflict resolution. By providing a neutral and sacred mechanism for settling disputes, oracles helped prevent prolonged conflicts or blood feuds. Divine judgment was viewed as final, which reduced personal and social tensions. Religious integration. Oracles reinforced the centrality of religion in daily life. Legal, social, and spiritual spheres were inseparable in Egyptian consciousness, ensuring that justice was understood as both a human and divine obligation. Legitimization of authority. By aligning law with divine will, pharaohs and priests enhanced their authority. Citizens perceived legal outcomes as morally correct because they reflected cosmic order. Case studies and archaeological evidence. Archaeological findings provide insights into oracular practices. Inscriptions and temple reliefs depict priests consulting deities on matters of justice, often showing individuals seeking divine counsel. For example, texts from the Temple of Thoth at Hermopolis describe oracular procedures for resolving disputes, emphasizing the importance of ritual purity and correct recitation. Similarly, papyri from the New Kingdom mention oracular trials in property disputes, indicating a standardized approach to sacred adjudication. Although the material evidence is fragmentary, literary sources like the Instruction of Ptahhotep and the Eloquent Peasant emphasize moral rectitude, divine oversight, and the consequences of falsehood, reflecting the cultural environment in which oracular justice operated. Decline and legacy. With the gradual decline of the pharaonic state and the rise of Greco-Roman influence, oracular justice became less prominent. Roman legal structures, emphasizing codified statutes and civic administration, supplanted much of the religiously mediated dispute resolution. However, the principle that divine authority underpins justice persisted in Egyptian society, influencing religious and ethical thought even under later Christian and Islamic rule. Modern scholars regard oracle-based justice as an early integration of law, religion, and psychology. It demonstrates how ancient Egyptians conceived justice not only as a social contract but as an alignment with universal truth, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of human morality and societal cohesion. Conclusion. Oracle-based justice in ancient Egypt represents a unique convergence of religion, law, and morality. By invoking divine authority to resolve disputes, the Egyptians ensured that societal order reflected cosmic order. While not replacing conventional courts, oracles provided a moral and spiritual check on human judgment, reinforcing the values of truth, fairness, and ethical conduct. This system highlights the centrality of Ma'at in Egyptian life, demonstrating that justice was not merely legalistic but fundamentally a spiritual and cultural principle. The legacy of oracle-based justice lies in its demonstration that law can be deeply intertwined with morality, belief, and societal cohesion, a lesson that resonates across civilizations and epochs. Sources 1. Assman, J. 2001, The Search for God in Ancient Egypt, Cornell University Press. 2. Hornung, E. 1992, Conceptions of God in Ancient Egypt, The One and the Many, Cornell University Press. 3. Lichtheim, 1973 to 1980, Ancient Egyptian Literature, Vols 1 to 3, University of California Press. 4. Robbins, G. 1997, The Art of Ancient Egypt, Harvard University Press. 5. Shaw I. 2003, The Oxford History of Ancient Egypt, Oxford University Press. 6. Teeter E. 2011, Religion and Ritual in Ancient Egypt, Cambridge University Press. 7. Allen J. P. 2005, Middle Egyptian, An Introduction to the Language and Culture of Hieroglyphs.